Right, so to begin with, shout out to Matthew Bold, who inspired a little bit of this video. This is a fat dude from Bulgaria, not related in any way to some guy called Matthew Bold, who compiled a bunch of statistics on the video game industry, and I heard about it. That's about it. And I just gave him a shout out. Okay, so simple concepts to understand before we begin. Stocks in the last couple of years have gone up, so Nintendo going down by 9% is bad, but Capcom going up by 46% is also bad because the S&P is around 50. Really, other than Konami with a plus 75%, everything looks bad. So worldwide consumer spending on games has plateaued, not counting inflation. Counting inflation, it's more like 13%, negative 13%, as GDP has gone up by 11%. So minus 13 and then whatever the 11% increase means, it's really going down. Now, most of that decline in terms of PC gaming is on the Western side, the English-speaking world, whereas Chinese PC gaming is going up. So it's not like we're not gonna have a lot of gaming on Steam Deck or phones, but yeah, over the last couple of years, all these companies and activists and so on and so forth have really fucked the gaming industry. So, what do I think is going to happen in the near future? So, to begin with, streamed games are unlikely to be a thing, even in 20 years' time. And let me explain the problem here. My brother got himself a 300 megabit internet connection. The problem is he's in a completely new apartment, right? He's got really fast internet, but he feels the latency if it's not connected through Ethernet, through a cable. So he's gonna have to run a cable. He's lucky enough to have his computer right next to the modem, so he's gonna have to run a cable straight to the modem, and it's gonna be ugly looking. Now, his walls, new walls, a couple, like 2-year-old, I think he moved in like 2 or 3 years ago, have Ethernet that's only capable of 80 megabits a second, except for maybe his, whatever. This means that unless someone figures out a software solution whereby he can just use his Wi-Fi card, a Wi-Fi USB-A adapter, and an Ethernet cable, so like prioritize the Ethernet cable to his shooter, and the Wi-Fi would be his torrenting or whatever else he uses internet for thing. Yeah, he's not gonna get supremely fast speeds on his computer unless he decides to sacrifice latency, and I think he should just use a Wi-Fi adapter, blah blah blah. Considering that my brother knows what he's doing and put in 80 megabit Ethernet anyway, just logically speaking, it just does not make any sense whatsoever. For I have 90 megabit Ethernet right here, and it still doesn't work right whenever I try to stream games on my phone. So it just doesn't work right. It just doesn't work right. It's always wrong somehow. It always feels off, and I just cannot. I have a phone with a 120 hertz screen, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work right. Your modem needs to specifically be designed to allow for very low latency, not just high capacity internet, which is what people have been like promoting when it comes to Ethernet. Internet providers have only been promoting, here's how many megabits per second you can get, blah, 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 blah. Nothing at all about latency. So even if they put in computers, powerful computers, locally, I live in one of the 20 biggest cities in Europe. Even if they put in decent computers, like 50, 90, 60, 90, whenever it comes out, maybe 70, 90, there will be a bandwidth limit, and it's going to be a significant limit because the physical Ethernet cable will not allow for very good streaming. It doesn't matter if your internet provider is like magically reworks the infrastructure so you get 100 times more internet. If your physical cable and modem are not designed to support stream gaming, it just doesn't make sense. On top of that, right now, the new AMD chips, the AI9 chips, or not even the AI9 chips, a chip with a 780M internal graphics chip, iGPU, is on par with a 1050 Ti. So that's just a couple of years away from matching something like a 1070. And once you match something like a 1070, once you get between 2 to 4 teraflops of performance at least, like PS4 to PS4 Pro performance, all the people who would be interested in stream gaming are going to look at their laptops, and it's just, do I pay an extra $200 for a stronger laptop with a better iGPU that I'm gonna need anyway because H.265 is a thing and very old laptops cannot process H.265, even though they're very, very good at other things. Like newer and newer compression algorithms, you're going to need an internal GPU. So an iGPU, stronger and stronger iGPUs are coming to the mass market, and greater amounts of RAM are coming to the mass market. So laptops that people have that that have 8 gigabytes of RAM are gonna be replaced with 16 gigabyte RAM laptops. When this happens, it simply doesn't make any sense to focus on streaming when you can just download a 6 gigabyte copy of RoboQuest, maybe even install it just in a RAM drive, and just play it off the RAM drive. You don't even need a high capacity like a laptop to do this. You can get a 256 gigabyte laptop without the extra stuff required, without all the extra memory. A very basic laptop, get something decent enough, and you'd get decent enough speeds to gameplay. All the top games like Fortnite or Valorant tend to have simplified graphics. The most played games tend to have the simplest looking graphics and are the most profitable because you can very easily develop and sell stuff for those games. It's just like MySpace versus Facebook. Facebook had the better programming language, or the easier to use code, so developers preferred Facebook, so they went with Facebook instead of MySpace. Irrespective of how many people were on those platforms or how good MySpace theoretically could have been without, if blah, 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 blah. PS2 and PS3, PS2, 16 times stronger than Pentium. Okay, but you gotta know how to work with the system, so it seemed unimpressive to a lot of people. PS3, same thing, because it was weird, it was a chip ahead of its time, but after 2 or 3 years, people figured out how to use the PS3 chip, so when they figured out how to use the PS3 chip, they put in a whole bunch of games. But the real gaming console that everybody remembers is PS4. PS4 simplified its chip and won the console wars. PlayStation barely has any games, and yet, Xbox still lost because Xbox didn't really think about utility. PlayStation just won, and now it's competing with Nintendo. A whole bunch of ripoff games. Like Sonic driving a car. Why is Sonic driving a car? Like, little robot goes around, does Mario stuff. Like, it's pretty obvious. And even though PlayStation's leadership has been idiotic over the last couple of years about managing its IP, it still won against Xbox because Xbox was even worse at managing its IP. Xbox and Microsoft just got so ridiculously lazy, and now they're losing. Their new stuff is losing. So if you don't make a thing fit what's there, if you don't know what's there, if you don't make your thing fit what's there, it's not gonna work. You cannot just get a $20 subscription for a 4K game, blah blah blah, when someone else can just sell you $2 games on GOG that you can play natively anywhere without an internet connection. Like, what's the point? You can just buy a game and play it at home. Your Ethernet just doesn't fit. Right, so streaming games, nonsense. Hate it, hate it, hate it. Whereas streaming video, you can move large chunks of the video, and your PC, your laptop will decompress those chunks. So you can get a stable 4K video. Now, does it make sense to tell people about RAM drives and do something like streaming games, only you just stream demos? But there's no difference between that and just downloading a game. You're just downloading and installing a game inside of a RAM drive, so it's meaningless. VR. VR has a hell of a lot of potential, but it's probably gonna be the most useful with phones with HDR, high refresh rate screens. If your phone can do what a thing that costs like $1,000 can do, there's just no point. You just get an adapter with lenses. There's just no point in not using your phone to do VR stuff. I think 3D TVs are gonna be the next big thing because there's no other thing to put on, like, as a selling point on your TV. Like, 3D movies are building up as a library, so having 3D games where you just watch a game in 3D as you're playing it, of course, it's gonna gonna apply a big load on your frame rate, but it's probably gonna be lower, like more aesthetic focused gameplay. It's gonna take a couple of years, but 3D TVs do make a lot of sense, especially considering digital cameras with 8K resolution, high dynamic range are dropping more and more in price and are starting at least one big, like, cheapo prosumer camera. Well, cheap prosumer, like the R5C, the R line of cameras from Canon, they do have one 3D lens on them, which I'm assuming was meant for aquatic video stuff, but realistically, I'm guessing that once 2 or 3 more lenses come into the market, you're gonna see a little explosion of indie 3D movies everywhere, or even an indie superhero movie or an indie sci-fi movie type thing. Spending on video is actually going up as the global market is, global GDP is also going up. So it does make sense that people might go the 3D route. Now, my new TV is an Ambilight TV. It's a micro LED instead of, I got it because I did a little research and found out that it's better price to performance for all relative to OLED, so I'm getting like 144 hertz signal from my computer. I'm using it like a monitor. It's got HDR, it's 4K, it's great, I love it, blah blah blah. It's not gonna give me a blowjob, but you can't have everything. You can't have your cake and eat it too. But still, like, the only thing left as a selling point for TVs is going the 3D route, in my opinion, and with slightly older movies being much, much better than the movies that are out now, and 3D glasses being cheap, easily available in your local theater for like $2. I think it was like $1 or $2. I don't remember. I don't pay attention to the price of the glasses when I buy 3D movie stuff. It just makes a lot of sense. I think I have like 20 or 30 3D glasses under my bed that I just keep forgetting to take out, and just it's the only thing left, really. So 3D gaming, I guess, would be the only thing left as a selling point for TVs, 3D movies and 3D gaming. But there's really not, like, smell-o-vision's not going to be very popular in the future. Who wants to get smell-o-vision while watching a movie? That's such a stupid gimmick. That's like something for your 9-year-old. Yeah, like, the future of gaming is a much, much weaker market with lots and lots of small games, more niche games. That's what I think. I think something like Proteus, which is less than even it's 1.5 gigabytes, I think, when installed, and it's running at 360p, and it just looks awesome. RoboQuest is 6 gigabytes. When you look at Plague Tale, RoboCop, other like Evil West, those are games within the 40 gigabyte range. Witcher 3, the newest version, with the DLC, it's about 50 gigabytes. Spider-Man 2 might be 100 and whatever, but most games aren't Spider-Man 2. They're not badly optimized nonsense that just has terrible storytelling written by brutally incompetent people for no reason. Just, there's so many things that can be done on a weaker budget with smaller teams that actually know what they're doing and can focus on game optimization, especially with newer and newer graphics cards. Even though the newer and newer graphics cards aren't improving that much because Nvidia is money hungry and retarded. And frankly, the AI market, the entire AI industry, it's most people just knew it was overhyped from the beginning. It's like we're getting more and more immunized to stupid, dumb ideas, in my opinion. Like NFTs, stupid idea. Gaming, like AI nonsense, really, really incremental. Personally, I don't see much of a difference between generating images from a randomized system, blah, 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 compared to that thing my S4 did back in 2014. There's this app that just turns your images into, that cartoonifies your pictures. I don't see much of a difference between a phone from a decade ago cartoonifying images and AI just doing that same thing with a few extra steps to compile a new image. It's really, really overhyped and overrated. Like you don't need Microsoft 365 to have like a program auto-convert your Word file into a PowerPoint. There just is no need for that. You don't need to do it outside of your computer. Your computer is decent enough to do that. You just need to program it right. It just doesn't make any sense. So after a big AI collapse, I think Nvidia is going to have to lower the prices to like make up for all the problems that it's causing by not releasing proper new cards for gamers. Like the 5090 launch, like everyone's looking at the die size and it's tiny. This is because there's only so much manufacturing year to year at every silica growing plant. Like there's only so many wafers that are produced every year, and Nvidia is just using its cut of the wafers to make AI nonsense, which everybody knows is extremely overhyped. It's beyond obvious. Every week it's getting more and more and more and more and more and more and more obvious, and it's a giant hassle. There just isn't any sort of reason to support it. It's just the dumbest market out there. It's even stupider than NFTs, because NFTs are just a little bit of a burden and can be legally loopholed into being like semi-licenses. And you can theoretically own the NFT with an image, sort of. If you add in like some sort of special barcode or whatever. That's how Oz from Buffy, the guy who made Robot Chicken, lost a bunch of money on an NFT. Like someone stole his NFT because it was like tied to legal paperwork, and just stealing the NFT gives whoever stole the NFT ownership of the art, and it's like the stupidest, dumbest thing. The art market is probably going to collapse also, at least partially, because of how stupid these digital nonsense things are. Like, you don't own the art. You own the space that's holding the art. I can sue you if you make an NFT of an image that I own, because you don't have the license to hold that image in your digital library. You don't own it. So it's stupid. Yeah, I think like the only real survivors of this gaming market deflation, not collapse, deflation, are going to be indie games. And some of these indie games are going to be wildly successful year for year for year, and some of those indie games are going to be sucked up into the same old cycle of stupid corporate idiots who don't know how games work, but just order up games and expect them to be complete in 2 years. Because big money is inherently idiotic, and year for year for year, it's getting more and more idiotic. More and more and more idiotic, and it just keeps making more and more mistakes, and it just doesn't make any sense. But also, those survivors are going to have to compete with pre-existing libraries of good games. So, even for the survivors of the market, they're going to have a much harder time competing, because pre-existing games already owned by the older corporate idiots are just gonna run perfectly well, and they're just gonna actually run better because of the newer hardware, and they're gonna get simple graphical uplifts, and just everything's gonna be like a difficult chaos nightmare realm. On top of that, more and more indie game studios from various individual countries are gonna keep winning and winning and winning more of the market share, and eventually China will see a collapse in its gaming economy as its rich people start doing stupid shit, and the inevitable problem of making games inside of like a controlled, super controlled environment with all kinds of politics is they're gonna have a woke period or a Bush period at some point. And when that happens, all these various game studios around the world will win out. Fundamentally, game engines, open source game engines, are only going to improve further and further and further. So it's going to become even easier to make an indie title. So something that costs 40 million now might cost 2.5 million 10 years from now. And when that happens, it's probably gonna run perfectly fine on a 3D TV used as a monitor, and just streaming games just don't make any sense at all anymore. I mean, they never made any sense to begin with, and it just doesn't make any they're gonna make even less sense, because the computers are going to eventually hit a point where they have the equivalent performance of a 3090, 4090, whatever. And that's what I think about the collapsing game industry.